You're listening to the Current Plays Podcast, Episode 20, On Mars. And now please welcome your hosts, Jordan and Thomas. Hello and welcome back, our explorative listeners. This week we are talking about On Mars. This one is by Vital Lacerda with artist Ian O'Toole. Two huge names that shouldn't need any introductions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's published by Eagle Griffin Games, and it plays 1 to 4 players. So this has been touted for many years as one of Vital Lacerda's most complex games. And it's got a weight rating on BGG of 4.63 out of 5.
That is wild. Yeah, yeah.
And you know what? Spoilers, I loved it. It was so good.
I've been thinking of it like ever since we played. And it's one of those things that I'm like, we got to play that again. I got like, especially just like thinking about how we played and like, okay, I want to try doing this differently and I want to do this differently and I want to see how this would work, right? Yeah, yeah. That complexity really adds to that, thought process of yeah. And I know there's like I'm already jumping already ahead, but like just the way things interacted and playing it multiple times would be easier to kind of like manage all that, right? So
Yes.
amazing. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, like so learning this game, I learned it playing it solo. And I mean, there was the challenge there too of trying to learn the solo bot, while learning how to play the game.
yeah.
But like the first time I tried it, I think I was 6 hours or more trying to play the game. And I got through maybe the first third of it. And I realized I was making mistakes all over the place.
Yeah.
So I rewatched some of the like how to play videos or whatever. Actually, what did it was watching a playthrough video, and I went, "Oh, I wasn't doing that. I wasn't doing that." And then I sat down and play it a second time and played the whole game in like 3 hours.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it caught on. Well, I'm talking about 6 hours and then another three, and I'm gonna say it caught on quick.
Well,
After that initial trying to slog through the rules and whatever, right?
I mean, I feel like you've already come to, okay, so 3 hours the next time, but then our game was 4.5 with two
Yeah,
players, right?
right.
So that's a
It,
further decrease
and
kind of thing,
and that
right?
included the teach too, right? Like that
Yeah,
4.5,
yeah.
I realized later, included
Fair
me
enough. Yeah.
teaching you the game. So
So yeah, we kind of ran through it fairly quickly for what it was. I mean, there was
I think
definitely some
so.
mistakes that I made, I know for sure. Usually we caught them, I think.
Yeah, I think
Would
for the
be
most
like,
part. Yeah,
oh, forgot to pay for this, sorry, and then we put the like stuff in or whatever, right? Or
yeah, yeah.
like I think one part it was like my turn, then I was like, okay, end of my turn, and you were like, okay, on my turn, I'm gonna build this, and I'm, oh no, I actually can't do that. Hold on. Right. Yeah. So like there
Yeah,
was a few
those.
things like that, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, to go over it briefly, like it is a very complex game and there are a lot of rules. So I'm not going to tell you all those rules, but I'll tell you how the game plays. You've got basically two sets of actions that you can perform. One while you're on a colony that's orbiting Mars, and then one when you're down on the Mars colony that you are building. So if you didn't know, the theme of this game is you are now on Mars and you're building the first Martian colony. So when you are up in the orbiting station, you've got actions like gaining resources, researching technologies, and gaining blueprints that you're going to use to go down to the colony. And then when you're down on the colony, you're going to be doing things like building buildings, upgrading those buildings, bringing on scientists to utilize like new actions and do things more efficiently, and then also take on contracts to either deliver goods or build certain, you know, sizes of, well, there's contracts to build 4 buildings of a certain type and upgrade one of those buildings. So thematically, I guess you're being contracted to develop a complex of a certain type of building that the colony needs. And that's really kind of it. There's a shuttle that goes back and forth between the orbiting station and the colony, and you as the player need to time when you're going to take that shuttle so that you can take the actions that you want to take. And as the game progresses, that shuttle travels like, well, I should say at first the shuttle goes back and forth every turn, and then as the game progresses, it takes longer and longer and longer. So, it travels every 2 turns. So if you don't take the shuttle, for one example, that's going to be like 4 turns before you know, can take that shuttle again. And
Yeah.
then 6 turns later on in the game. So timing is key, and then it's board placement with you've got a little robot that builds the buildings, so you got to have your robot placed properly if you want to build buildings in certain locations. And yeah, it's just very intricate that way. um Very cool, very thinky, lots of planning ahead, and I absolutely adore it.
You know, I think sometimes about like we obviously, and we've said this many times, we play a lot of games, right? And we've played oh we have already played a lot of games and we do play a lot of, right? Um
Yeah.
and I think, back when we first got into gaming, some of the stuff that we, started playing, we even touched on this last or I don't know, last of the previous one with Architects of the West Kingdom. Architects, yeah.
Yep.
Um, and how like that seemed really complex when we played it the first time, kind of thing, right?
Right.
So but as us as gamers have come so far along that like this game, I imagine sometimes what my thought process would have been trying to start this game back when we started playing games, right? Like this would have been like mind-boggling, insanity to try and figure. But I didn't find it that bad. Like that 4.36, I
No.
actually looked it up the other day as well because I was like, I wonder what the complexity, because I mentioned it at work. And sure enough, yeah, I saw that 4.36 or whatever it was, and I was like, wow, yeah, like there's a lot going on. There's a lot of rules. There's a lot of interaction between things, right? And generally when that happens, the complexity on BGG is usually high, right?
Right.
But once you have on it, like if the second time I play this game, I know everything will be like 100%. I'll be like, yeah, I know I can do this and do this and do this, and there won't be any surprises, right?
Yeah.
Situationally, there might be surprises because something came up in our specific playthrough that we haven't seen, since we've only played it, once together. But yeah, nothing rules wise will come up that will be really complex to kind of grasp, right?
Yeah, and I think part of that is the excellent graphic design that,
Mm-hmm.
Tool has done. But it boils down to you've got a few sets of actions that you can do, and the actions themselves are not complex. But I think where the complexity comes in is there's a lot of like, okay, you do this, except in these situations you can do this too. Like,
Yeah.
or this works a little bit differently in this situation. So there's like a couple of weird rules that you have to remember, and like weird exceptions that you have to remember. But other than that, and I think those are the only things that I really got tripped up on the first time playing it through. I think much like you're saying, once I got a grasp on the rules, I thought this isn't all that complex.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. There's a heavy load of thinking of how you're going to, progress and score the best you can. But that's the same with a lot of games. This one obviously has because there's a lot of moving parts. And
Mhm.
I really love that shuttle. That shuttle is such a neat aspect to the game, right? Because you're cutting yourself off of half of the actions, depending on which side of the shuttle you're on, right? Or whether you're in orbit or on the planet, right?
Right.
So you really have to think. It's fine, usually 1-to-1 when that ship is early on. Okay, it's always shuttling back and forth, no big deal. But then when we got to the last half of our game, I'd say, and that bumped up to 2. I don't think I ever went back to orbit, and
Right.
potentially to my detriment as well. But it just situationally, when I could go back to orbit, it was never the right time, right? And you only have like you've got 2 turns,
Yes.
and then it's gone, and then you 2 turns, wait till it comes back, and so the 4 turns in between. And at certain times to be like, yes, I'd love to be on that side, but I'm stuck here for another 2, 3 turns now.
Right.
So it had to be in a situation where it'd be like, okay, I can do 1 turn here, but I can't do 3 more, so I better go over, kind of thing, right? So that was an interesting development on how that interplays with your decision making and whatnot too. And I really like that, and I thought that was cool. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love how he tied in when you like certain things happen only when you travel. So, you're building these buildings. When you build a building, it's not your building. It's just all the players are kind of in it together and everybody shares everything except for certain times. So,
Hmm.
when you build a building, you're trying to build the building for the colony. But then what you can do is you can upgrade that building, and that's when you put your own unique stamp on it, right? And then depending on what building that is, whether it's like a water facility, plants, oxygen, or a power plant, right? You when you travel, sorry, or mines to get minerals, that's the last one. When you travel from the colony to orbit, that's when you produce those resources. So other than that, like you really have to think, how am I going to get resources in this game to build more buildings?
Yeah.
And you do that when you're on the colony, so you're getting all these resources right when you don't need them, right? So it's another thing you have to plan ahead for, because then of course if you do produce a bunch of resources and then you go to orbit, that's when you can get resources from the warehouse on orbit, and then you're stocking up to then go back down to the colony. And then when you go back down to the colony, some bonus tiles go out on the board. And that's when your workers come back to you, is when you're traveling. So super, super cool how he incorporates this traveling into the game. And I'd say most of the actions that you really want to take, most of the actions that are gonna end up getting you, like progressing you in the game and getting you points, are happening down on the colony. But so you spent most of your time down there, and I had a couple of times where I'm like, man, I need to go back because I'm out of resources, I'm out of workers. But then I'm giving Thomas the opportunity to get so far ahead, and like, he could build 2, 3 times before I have a chance to get back down there. So how am I going to deal with that, right?
Yeah, it really felt like, yeah, when you were in orbit, you were prepping almost like an engine that you could then run off of when you were on planet, right? Me, I was going straight to planet and I was just, chugging ahead, but it wasn't. as efficient as when like you would come. So it was really, it came down to if I can push a farther enough lead ahead of you, then even with your efficiency, when you come over, you won't be able to catch up, right? And it was close. It came close to it where I almost pushed that envelope far enough. But I think what
Yeah.
I found was so also a neat aspect of it. And part of this, part of the reason this all happened was we drew tiles on where our first starting kind of location was going to be. And you ended up in orbit and I ended up on planet. And that initial me being on planet changed my entire strategy going forward because I was like, okay, I got to jump right into this because I don't want to wait to the ship gets here and then shuttle back and then you've already prepped and then are coming back efficient and I gotta you know what I mean? So I was
Yeah.
like, I just gotta dive in right now. But one of the things in orbit what you can do, and I thought was really cool, is that the tech spot basically, right? So you gain these various techs and you add them to your player board. And like you said, because this is it's shared resources. When you develop that tech, the other player can use it. And I think it's such a neat aspect of like that whole sharing thing, even with the buildings, with the tech. I think it's a brilliant design choice because it really makes you think about what buildings you're bringing on board because okay, I'm also giving my opponent access to this, right? But also same with the techs, right? Like which techs am I going to take that my opponent might find juicy enough that they're going to want to use? Because anytime they use my tech, I get this resource, and I can either take the resource or I can use that resource at the end of the turn to bump that tech up a level on my player board here.
Yeah.
And that was going in. I was like, I'm going to go heavy tech. And then I ended up on the other side of the board, and I was like, okay, forget the tech. I'm going heavy industry here, right?
Yeah.
And but so many times I looked over at your board and I was like, I wish I had that tech on mine because it would be free to use. I wouldn't have to, bump the tech up for you. And I know every time I was bumping your techs up, it was just giving you points, right? Because at the end of the game, you score based on how leveled your techs are, right? Well, only had, by the end of the game, I had three, tech spots on my board, and one of them starts at level 2. So like I added two techs throughout the entire game, and I think you
Yeah.
had something like five or six, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, there's nine total, and we left two of them.
yeah.
So, and then if you had three, then I must have four. Yeah.
Well, I had two because I had the
Oh,
because one starts on your board. Yeah, yeah,
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So
So,
yeah,
well, it's right at the beginning of the game. So interesting. Uh, you want to build complexes in this game, and complexes means building the same type of building together. So you want greenhouses to be built beside each other, and you want power plants to be built beside each other. But you can't build complexes. You can't build those together unless you have the technology researched to allow that. So, you can have a standalone building by itself. If you want two of those together, you need a level one tech to do that. If you want three of those together, you need to have that tech at level two. So, and so on and so forth. I grabbed the green and sorry, before I say that, the building complexes lets you basically get points. So if you build a complex, not only you're going to get points for building the building if that building's required, uh, but you get to put a little cube out on the board, and then whenever something happens, you get points for it. So you're really incentivized to build what's needed, what hasn't already been built, and you're incentivized to build them in complexes. So I grabbed one of the techs that you didn't have, thinking, okay, well, you've built this complex already. I'm going to build the greenhouse complexes. I grabbed that tech. Well, right away, the next turn, you're like, well, I'm going to build that greenhouse complex and take it from underneath you. And that like ruined my whole strategy. And like, I think it was very early in the game. And right from there, I went, okay, I can't rely on getting points from building buildings. And I did it whenever I could manage to. But right there, it changed my whole strategy. And I went, okay, I've got to grab, techs and I've got to grab blueprints so I can build advanced buildings and get my points that way through end game points rather than through building and getting them like during the game.
Yeah, and this game definitely has that it's got immediate points you can score, so you'll immediately see your player marker move up the round track around the edge of the board, right? But then it has points that you score at the end of the game as well, right? So yeah, there was often times where it would be like, okay, yeah, I'm far on the track, but I know you're sitting on a bunch of points that if you can unlock, that's big points at the end that I don't have that same thing, right? And that ended up being how it played out, right? Like I was farther ahead, I think double. You
Oh
were at like
yeah.
30 and I was at like 60 points, something like
You're
that on the
61, yeah.
yes, on the round track or on the outside track, point track. But it was those various other points that I didn't have, right? Um, or we had the exact same amount, like when it came down to ships that we had brought and the contracts we had fulfilled, we tied on both those aspects, and it was like, okay, those were my
Yeah.
like secondary and third ways of getting points higher than you, but it didn't matter, right? Um, that was really neat too. Like the how you said when you were talking about the greenhouses there and how I took the upgrade there out from under you kind of thing. I love how that plays too because so I ran in and I built this level 2 complex. So essentially you got the tech that allowed for level 2 complexes of greenhouses. That meant two greenhouses can be placed next to each other. One starts on the board. Great. You were still in orbit. I'm on planet, so I can do that. So I built the greenhouse. I got a bunch of points for doing it because it was required to essentially upgrade our space station or our
Hmm.
Mars colony. So I got a bunch of points for that. I got some resources out of it. And then that hit the max of where the tech was, right? Okay, we were only allowed to build level 2. So no longer can we add another greenhouse to that complex. But because I used your tech, you got that resource. And at the end of my turn, you got to decide, do I upgrade this to level 3 now, right? And yes, you did, because not only that, like that's a point for you to upgrade a tech. So you upgrade that and you open up a spot for more techs to come in, right?
Yep.
So that was so interesting because like now you got a point and movement along the and there's some other benefits by increasing the levels of those techs, right? But so you move that up, you got a little something, not as much as I got for actually building that. But then you open up an extra spot so you could have more techs, and theoretically the more techs you have, and we really saw this, is that I kept having to go to you and being like, I'm using that tech, I'm using that tech, I'm using that tech, because you can only have one version of the tech. Once the tech is discovered, one player has it, the other player does not. The other player can use it, but at the risk of giving you resources and potentially resources or bumping up that tech to a future level, right? So
Yeah.
that's interesting because then right away I could have built another one. Like I could have been like I built another um greenhouse there because now you took the upgrade on that tech. That means now I can build a third level greenhouse. However, at that point, our Mars shelter, like our it
Colony.
did colony, it didn't need another greenhouse. So I would
Yes.
have done it and gotten no points for doing it, but I would have bumped up your tech and given you points, right? So it's like all the techs and the colonies, those upgrades when you're building those buildings, they have to essentially what you want to do is increase them at the same speed. Okay, this goes up, and there's four of them. There's five of them actually. This goes up, this goes up, this goes up, this goes up. Now we progress up, right?
Hmm.
Or I guess there's four, but you essentially, yeah, you're trying to grow at the same so you can score as many points as you can, right? And that's what I was trying to do was sneak in and steal as many of those points while you were still in orbit. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
and try and do that, right? It was neat. It was a neat way of looking at things for sure.
Yeah. So there's I've mentioned the warehouse in orbit, which has like a stock of resources. And there's these blueprint cards, which lets you upgrade buildings so that, so that they are going to produce for you, and it also scores points at the end of the game. Um, None of those refresh until your colony level goes up. And your colony level doesn't go up until you've built one of each of the four types of buildings. Again, there are five types of buildings, but there's only four that count for this part. Mines don't count. Um, but then, so once you've built all of those four buildings, then the colony level goes up. And then, then the colony needs all those buildings again. So if you build a building and it goes up and matches the colony level, you can still build that type of building again, but you don't receive any rewards for doing so because you're basically that at that point you're not helping the colony. You know, you're doing your own thing instead of what the colony needs, so you don't get rewarded for it, which is really neat. It's really neat and adds a really interesting dynamic to play because I remember a few times I was sitting there, I'm like, okay, I got to do this, this, and this before I can build this type of building so I can get those points, and advance this. And then you'd build it. And I'd be like, well, now I can do it, but I have absolutely no incentive to do so.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe I'll like hold on to this, and maybe once we upgrade the colony, then I can do it at that point, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there was a few times where I'd be like, okay, I'm building this. I think it was generally the greenhouse. I'll build the greenhouse. I'm only going to score 2 points for it, but it'll stop you from scoring like 8 points on building the
Right.
greenhouse, right? And
Yeah.
then I was doing well. I had the tech for the water, and the energy, but the water one I had expanded. So it was like if I do that and I can bump it so that we're at an area where we go to the next level with the colony, then I can hit the water building again, do that. And that one I scored a lot of points for, right? So I was getting 10 points every time it built a water
Right.
filtration station or whatever the water building was, right? So it was like, yeah, I'll do this. I'll only score two, which isn't great, and I have to upgrade your tech, but it'll get me closer to being able to use my water building again and getting another
Yeah. Yeah.
10 points, right? So and then and again, I got 2 points, but you missed out on eight, right? So,
Right.
that was the and I felt like that was working for a bit. It was the what really was my detriment, I found, was the my power buildings. You were never building them. So that
Well, so you didn't upgrade that tech ever because that you didn't get just the way that the bonuses fell out. I
yeah.
went heavy on mines, and it was, you only scored points for having stuff on mines. So you didn't
Yeah.
have any, so you're like, I'm not getting points for this, so you didn't upgrade that tech ever, so I couldn't ever build any of the complexes for the power generators.
Yeah, yeah. And that hurt because that never um and then I there was never a good time to upgrade it. And because you weren't using it, wasn't upgrading that way. So that was always kind of like lagging and it was very difficult. So there was a few turns near the end where I just had to like build a power plant on its own,
Right.
which you can do, but you miss out on when you build in a complex, you score one resource of the type of whatever you built in the complex for each building in that complex, right? So like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
first time you build the water complex, that's two buildings, you get two water. That by the time we put our fifth one down, it was like five water resources. And that's a ton of like you're good for like 5 turns with that, right? If you're spending them every kind of turn, right? Which you never do. So like five of anything is quite a few resources, right?
Hmm.
But because of that, like I play that and then I get a little bump up on the points track for the energy one and one power resource and that was it, right? And those turns probably slowed me down is what I'm, when I think about how quickly I jumped out of the gate, my end game is which was is what that slowed to a halt essentially, right? And I had to take some
Yeah.
turns that I only scored a couple of points by doing very inefficient actions. And by then too, like even things like I was really low on crystals because it'd been so long since I went into orbit to up like get that efficiency over there to bring back that I was really struggling to combo anything and everything became like okay, I need to take quick points, like draw quick. I felt almost like I was like one of these like I don't know, corporations that just like drawing things out of the planet for quick gains. Not, I don't care about the colony. I'm just taking my riches out while I can, right? So just now in
Nice.
real life, I feel like that's a valid strategy that corporations do. But in board games, we at least, we frown on that, right? It doesn't
Well,
work as well, right?
I don't know, because like I saw you doing all this stuff and getting these points, these quick points. Now, I was sitting on a bunch of end game points, but the whole time I was stressed going, am I going to be able to do everything in time before the game ends? And
Hmm.
I did manage to, but like barely.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, like if I had missed, you know, well, there were a couple of key things that if I hadn't been able to pull them off in time, that would have been the game for me.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I won by like 8 points. So yeah. One of the big ones was the contracts. So it's neat when you hire a scientist, then you get to look at all the contracts and then put one out. But that action, uh, when you go there to hire the scientist, and then you can't take that action again until you've removed that worker, which in most cases means you've gone up to orbit and then come back down to the colony. And later in the game, that could be many several turns, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Meanwhile, that contract's sitting there free for your opponent to grab, if they take that action. So I'm like, what? There was one contract that was 12 points that I really wanted, but would also get you 12 points because it was for your settlements,
Sure.
like
Yeah,
having
yeah.
having a complex of 4 settlements with an upgraded building on it. And you were already sitting on a complex of 4 settlements with an upgraded building on it. So I was like, I really need this, but I don't want to put it out in a way that you could grab it
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
were already sitting on two 12-point contracts. And I'm like, I need this just to catch up and, make up that difference. And I don't remember. I almost did it in one turn, but I was one crystal shy, and I was so mad.
It's funny you say that because I actually didn't have a upgraded building on the housing structures kind of thing. And that at one point I because I saw that when you put out a contract, you look through the stack of contracts, and I saw that
Yeah.
contract in there, and I was like, another 12 points. And I already knew I was grabbing the other two. And I looked at all the blueprints, and none of them put buildings on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all those were gone. You had taken those already, and I went, oh. So then I kept it buried. I didn't bring it out.
Oh, I
But
could have
sure
been
enough,
more efficient.
you took a scientist, and brought it out, right? You saw that and you
Yeah.
brought that one out. There was two of them.
Yeah.
There's a wind. There was the wind. I call it wind, but I think it's oxygen.
Oxygen.
So there was a wind one, and there was that one where both I didn't have buildings on those locations. Now the oxygen one may have had a building. I don't recall if there was a upgrade building, but at that point it was too.
Mhm.
Yeah, like getting the blueprint. I needed crystals to be able to free action take a blueprint or executive
Yeah.
action as they call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I never had enough crystals near the end of the game. And I didn't have the turns to go to shuttle back and then shuttle back, right?
That's when
So
I brought that one out when I
yeah,
saw you had none when you didn't have enough crystals to do it.
yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. What's cool about those contracts, really, and the blueprints as well, is the game discourages you from hate drafting those, right? So
Yes.
like I could have taken one of those contracts and I had a free executive action I could take every turn to pull my worker off that location that typically you can only put one worker at, right? And which was great for grabbing a bunch of contracts at once. But if you don't complete that contract or if you don't build the blueprint, same thing.
Hmm.
Instead of getting the points from it, those are worth negative points and like a decent amount of negative points, right?
Yeah.
So like maybe there's some play there where I could have stole one of those contracts and I would have had to waste turns where I was scoring real points to take that. But then you wouldn't have scored 12, but I would have lost nine. So, okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
maybe. But yeah, very interesting. A lot of interconnected little bits there that I'd love to explore more.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, the systems are so interconnected. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But that's Vital Lacerda for you, right? Yeah, I'm sure we could go on and on and on about this game. We'll have
Oh,
to
for
get it
sure.
out again soon. But yeah, any final thoughts?
Honestly, after playing this one, like I want to get more of his games in our collections, so we could just kind of see how the rest of them are. Because no, it was a really good one, and it's gonna hurt our wallets.
Yep. The one thing I haven't mentioned is the production value is incredible. Eagle Griffin Games did an amazing job. My one complaint is like I've like played this a couple of times now, and some of the tiles, like the printed paper part, is starting to like peel a little bit and on
Mm.
the edges, which I mean that is what it is, but that was a little disappointing. But those tiles are nice and thick. Anyway, solo mode's great, production's great, design is great, the gameplay's
Artwork's great.
great,
Yeah.
artwork's great. Like no bad things to say about this game. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. If you haven't tried it, go try it. I know it sounds complex and scary, but if you can get somebody to teach it to you, it's well worth it. And that wraps up another episode of the Current Plays podcast. Check us out next week on YouTube or your favorite podcast provider. But until then, good gaming and good night.
Good night, folks.